the Squeegee Collaborative, from the team at Under Armour, Jim, Tom, Shane, and others that hosted a number of our meetings and supported the design of the plan and hosted us today at the UA House. I also want to make sure that we acknowledge those folks that really pushed us and pushed this work. All of the collaborative members, from Shalonda, who has been by our side representing the interests of the business community, and Brian and Lester. And also our legal eagle, who I think you all, everybody is laughing because they know exactly who I'm talking about. I couldn't be talking about anyone else other than Miss Ebony that ensured our recommendations met constitutional muster. And to my amazing co-chairs, Joe and John, I could not imagine the last 4 months without you by my side, sending late night and early morning texts. You too represent the absolute best of Baltimore. And finally, to the Squeegee leadership team, who was led by Dr. Kyla Liggett-Creel from the University of Maryland School of Social Work. She could not be with us today. And Tracy Estep. So to Vicki, to Davion, and to Kayvon, I'm a better human because I got to spend time with each of you. And I thank you for believing in this collaborative and for touching all of us in unique ways. To my full Squeegee Collaborative family, we did it, y'all. No, we are doing it together. So in closing, I will leave you with a message from one of our great scholars, the amazing Dr. Andre Bunley, Director of the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement. It is only, give it up for Dr. Bunley. It is only by changing the hearts and mindsets of our city's young people that we can get them on productive pathways. So please visit aamebaltimore.com/squeegee-collaborative to download the full plan. On the website, you will find a community resource guide. We also developed, in partnership with collaborative members to serve as a resource as community leaders are out there having difficult conversations about these recommendations. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Squeegee Collaborative, thank you. Next, I want to bring up my partner in crime, Mr. Joe Jones. And I think most of the folks in this room know Joe and how amazing he is. But I really got to know Joe and John over the past 4 months. And Joe is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met in my life. He approaches this work with intentionality and with his heart. And so we would not have been able to achieve what we've achieved with this group of folks from different sides of this issue if it were not Joe bringing forth his kind, thoughtful, and intentional leadership to this process. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming up Mr. Joe Jones.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Leach. I'm Joe Jones, CEO of the Center for Urban Families. First thing I want to ask, why would the Deputy Mayor introduce me as her partner in crime while I'm standing next to the police commissioner? That is a true setup. Mayor Scott, thank you for the charge you gave us, the charge to bring to you a set of recommendations and a workable plan for your consideration to address an issue with young people in Baltimore, some of Baltimore's youngest citizens who are at intersections throughout this city, hustling, earning money. And one of the things that they said to us is, we don't want to do drugs. We don't want to sell drugs, right? What we want to do is earn. And there are a set of circumstances, in their own words, that prevent them from doing so. And so they created an underground economy that's important to them. And we needed to understand it, we needed to dissect it, and we did that. And we didn't do that in isolation of them, we did it in partnership. I'm very honored that John Brothers, who you'll hear from, and I accepted the call from City Hall. I don't know if we're going to take another call from City Hall on this one. There were no more hours in a day to add. Right? So we had to roll up our sleeves and give this the type of attention that's deserving of our city. I've never been more proud of Baltimore than I am of the work and time and effort that we put in to creating this action plan, right? Our community engagement process was deliberate, it was intentional. It first started by asking Baltimoreans to come to the table to help us to think through, how do we address this issue? Representative of that are the folks who are with us today here and others who couldn't be with us, ranging from folks who run major institutions in this city, right? The nonprofit sector, philanthropy, right? Folks from city agencies, right? Dr. Santalice says, I can't tell you how proud I am the fact that because we got young people who should be in school at our intersection, Baltimore City Public Schools stepped up, right? That was a part of our engagement strategy. So we have a strategy now to address that you heard as reported by Deputy Mayor Leach, right? We also had this community engagement, this community conversation at New Shiloh Baptist Church. Over 200 people came. We did not prescribe how people should come, nor did we do that with the collaborative. We had some very, very uncomfortable conversations, but through the values that we established, based on mutual trust and respect, we allowed those uncomfortable conversations to come to fore. We dissected them, and we made sure that the historical context was represented in the work. Right? We also met throughout Baltimore City. We did not choose one location. We met at churches, we met at businesses, we met at rec centers, and we said to people, come. We thought about whether or not it should be a closed process. And we said that, if this is about Baltimore, we have to take the extra step to allow as many people to participate as they felt that they had the time to contribute. And we did that. That was a value that we extolled, right? To the young people of Baltimore, and I want to be really, really thoughtful about this, right? They are capable. They are extremely capable. So when Deputy Mayor Leach mentioned Dr. K, Dr. Akala Leggett-Creel at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, under her tutelage, she brought what we call the squeegee leadership team, right, together. And this is what they did when you talk about capable, right? She worked with them, and they designed a survey, right? And then they took the survey and they administered to other young people who squeegee throughout the city, right? And then they synthesized the findings and they reported the findings here in this building as a part of our deliberative process. And those findings help to inform the process, and it's included, references to it are included in the plan, right? That's what I mean about them being capable. Right? And we need to push them further, but we also need to wrap around services, right? We need to love them up, right? We need to hold them accountable, because I'm going to tell you about accountability. They held us accountable, right? There's some push and tug between us around, some of these recommendations. That's what true, authentic Baltimore is about. The last thing that I want to say to you is, if you believe in this city, you have got to believe in this plan. This is, for us, this is no different, and John hates when I use sports references. I love the Ravens, so I always use a sports reference, right? This is like the Ravens who go into every game with a game plan, right? By the time you get to halftime, they may be behind, right? And at halftime, they make necessary adjustments, and sometimes mid-game they call audibles, right? And they come into the second half of the game, and this year, that team is showing up. And I believe that this team, Baltimore's team, will show up for our young people, for our citizens, to make a safety and health environment for all of us to prosper, particularly our young people. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Vicki Thompson. Now, the thing about Vicki, come on up, Vic.
Future lawyer. This is a future lawyer right here.
So these young people got to engage with the police commissioner, right? But Vicki had a nerve to engage in a discourse with the deputy city solicitor, right? So when you talk about capabilities, you see a young person who has the capability to be anything in this country, in this world, that she wants to be. And that is what we're going to do for her and for the rest of the young people in our city. Thank you.
How y'all doing today? First, I want to thank Deputy Mayor Leach, Dr. Bunley, Ms. Tracy, the Mayor's Office of African American Males Engagement. My name is Victoria Thompson. I'm 18 years old. I grew up in East Baltimore, where I didn't have the mindset to stay on the straight and narrow path, which caused me to drop out of school and start squeegeeing. Now, I'm on the path of finishing high school and starting my own business to help the youth. That's now going through what I went through when I was outside every day. I'm here to tell you that we are not animals. We are human. We need your help. We squeegee because we don't have the money for the basic things like clothing and food. We want a better life, and we just want the guidance and need the guidance to do something positive. Thank you.
The first thing I want to say is, Vicki, we're proud of you. I'm proud of you. And it's not only proud of what you just did, which is really hard to do, but I am proud to have done this work that we're all here today in partnership with you. I'm glad you locked arms with us. I'm glad you trusted us to do this, and thank you. So my job is to talk to you about where we're going, but I'm John Brothers, and I'm with T. Rowe Price. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor always helps me out. So again, my job is to kind of talk about where this is going, and what I would say is, quoting Teddy Pendergrass, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And so, right, I'm going to bring it to old school R&B. But using that, what I want to say is, we can't do this work unless we recognize that a lot of people have been dedicated to this issue for a long, long time. Right? This just didn't start here. So if anybody that is enterprising and wants to look into this, Lucille Gorman in the early 80s, creating Squeegee School for young people. And ever since then, a lot of work has been done. And so I just want to recognize we stand on the shoulders of those that did this work before us, and we hope today that this work reflects the spirit and the energy that you worked so hard on. And ultimately, we are driven to making sure that this is successful. And we believe we've learned from you and have created an apparatus to be able to do that. We also need to recognize what we have here today. We know that the past attempts were not as successful as we would hope to be able to solve this issue, but nonetheless, we're using the learnings from that. If you sat back, squeegee is one of those issues that if you sat at the Thanksgiving table and just said squeegee, you'd have a lot of people at the table saying lots of different things. It brings up a lot of feelings and for a variety of reasons. So imagine 100 people and you say to them, we're going to try to tackle this issue. Immediately, 90 of them are going to leave because this is really hard work. What we did is really hard work. And then you say to the remaining 10, we're going to try to solve this with 150 plus people who don't agree with each other, right? That's what happened. And so I want to recognize that this was really hard. The conversations were really hard. This is a really tough issue. There is a reason why we haven't solved for this. And so I just want to recognize the people that are standing behind me and the people that are part of this collaborative, because as we present this work to you, which again is ongoing work on the collective, which is voices of many, many people. It's important to remember that this plan is special, especially in the world that we live in today, which is really hard to get agreement on things, yes? And we were able to do that here. And I would even offer up, the reason that we were able to do that is because Baltimore has something special, right? We don't always get along. It's tough in Baltimore. But what we've produced here today, and what we're going to continue to work on today, is going to be successful because we are Baltimore. And so I think it's important to recognize that. So as now I get on to next steps, what I want to say is the work doesn't end today. As Deputy Mayor Leach reminded us, the work continues to move forward. And what we hope to create, learning off of the past, is that we try to create infrastructure and systems that will outlast any one person, right? That's why we have created this infrastructure, which previously did not exist. And so as we look at the three areas, there's a couple of next steps that will exist that I think it's important for you all to know. The first one is, in the services area, Baltimore is some of the best service delivery organizations in the world. And so our job now as part of this is to wrap our arms around those folks that are doing this work as we sit in this room right now and bring them together to say, how can we lock arms, use the amazing services that you're already doing, and try to rally them together to service this really important group. So that's on the services side. We're going to go out now and reach out to many of those providers, many of them that were part of the collaborative and many of them that were not. On the accountability side, I think the work now is to work with BPD on thinking through community engagement and enforcement protocol, right? I think we have a really good roadmap on what we want to do. Now we have to figure out how we dot the I's and cross the T's. On governance and data and measurement, which is the third area, this is a really big plan, would you agree? And to be able to do that, we have to communicate to a variety of partners, right? We have to communicate to our young people that are squeegeeing and hopefully formerly squeegeeing. We have to talk with drivers and motorists. We have to talk to partners. There's a lot of people that care about this issue and that are involved in this issue, and we have to go out there and educate them on the new protocols and the things that we're about to do. MOIM is an amazing effort. Dr. Bunley is an amazing leader. But I think Dr. Bunley would say, like any organization, we need to ramp up to be able to do this work really well. And so there's an effort in the city called Civic Innovators, which brings corporate talent together in cross-corporate teams to help city agencies get more effective. I am so fortunate to work for an organization called T. Rowe Price. And what T. Rowe Price has, a lot of great things, is infrastructure, like Under Armour and like our other companies. What we want to be able to do is afford that infrastructure to Dr. Bunley and his team to help grow and create a really great city agency. I also represent the philanthropic community, and we want to pull together, and we've already had really great discussions with our local philanthropies and business partners about how they can come together and use their resources to support this work. We have a governance structure that we're going to pull together. We have an ongoing data and review section, and then finally evaluation. And we want to realign. This thing is going to move and shift and shape itself as this initiative moves forward. That's important for you all to know. So the last thing I'll say is one thing that's really important for all of us to remember is that it's not only us that has to solve for this issue, it's all of you have to help solve for this issue. And so we have created mechanisms that will allow citizens in this city, everybody in this city, to be able to join this. So whether you're a corporate person that's involved in the corporate community and you want to join Civic Innovators and help build up the amazing things that Dr. Bunley and his team are doing, you have an opportunity to do that. If you're a volunteer and you want to serve this issue, there's a lot of great organizations that will be part of the service wheel that you'll be able to lock arms with and join. If you're a donor and you want to donate and give your financial resources, there's a brand new Shine platform that you see in the plan where amazing folks like Vicki say, hey, I need this to help me do these amazing things. And as a donor, you'll be able to give to that very specifically to be able to do that work. If you're in the media, the opportunity here is now you have the opportunity to tell the stories of these young people in the right way and in ways that they're often not told. And I think this is an opportunity for you to be able to see not only great folks like Vicki, but a lot of really great folks that are doing this work that have amazing stories. That's one of the huge benefits that I think that I've gotten from this process is I've gotten to know these young people in a really amazing way, and they're amazing. And I think for you that are storytellers, you have the opportunity to tell the story in that way. And so last thing I will say is also if you just want to stay informed and just want to kind of see how this initiative, you'll be able to kind of 1 month, 5 months, 6 months, years from now, be able to pull up the website and see how's it going? Where's the impact happening? That's really awesome. So again, I remind you this work begins today, and we hope that as we move forward, that we continue to iterate, shape, and shift ourselves to meet the needs of the day. So I'm going to hand this over to Mayor Scott, and as I do, I want to thank him for his leadership on this. I also want to thank him for giving us Deputy Mayor Leach, who has been an amazing partner in this work. And when you see an amazing person like Deputy Mayor Leach, you want to grab onto them. And I'm so proud to have been able to do this work with you. Thank you so much. Mayor Scott.
Actually, John, we're now going to hear from one of the best legal minds in Baltimore City, our Deputy City Solicitor, Ebony Thompson.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Ebony Thompson, Deputy City Solicitor, and also Interim Chief of Staff for the Mayor. I wanted to address the constitutionality of the enforcement or the accountability portion of the plan. I wanted to state that following a tense review and analysis of local ordinances related to solicitation and obstruction of traffic, city legal officials determined that while panhandling, squeegeeing, and solicitation are protected practices under the First Amendment, the city is able to disallow the practice in specific locations as long as the strategy is narrowly tailored to public safety and allows alternative avenues for individuals to practice their First Amendment rights. And we want to stress, although the focus has always been on whether the laws are enforceable. Enforcement is a vital component of the Collaborative's comprehensive plan, but when determining our enforcement strategy, you have to factor in the possibility for a law to be constitutional as written, but to be enforced in an unconstitutional way. And we believe the question of how we enforce is just as important as if the law is enforceable. This is exactly why our approach moves beyond the cursory work of merely removing a problem from visibility from a certain geographic section of the city that has been traditionally linked to prosperity. However, it provides a comprehensive solution that preserves public safety and the rights of all of our residents. And this approach, we believe, meets what is called the letter of the law, meaning what is written, the application of the law, which ultimately should meet the spirit of the law, and all three of them have to be constitutional. So with that, I'll turn this back over to the mayor or Deputy Mayor Leach, whichever one wants to come up next.
Thank you very much, Deputy Solicitor, and thank you all again for being here today. I also want to recognize some of our elected officials and partners that have joined us. Councilman Chris Burnett, who was a part of the collaborative. Thank you very much, sir, for all your great work. What are you, he's hiding over there? We also joined today by our two new delegates, Delegate Mark Edelson, who is here today, and Delegate Kaylin Young, my delegate, who I heard defeated Councilman Burnett about 5 times last night in basketball, but I wasn't there. That's why he won every game. But I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank my partner, Dr. Sangelises, for her efforts in supporting this work and supporting young people each and every day throughout Baltimore City. And with that, everyone, you have now heard the game plan, as Joe said, right? And we know that our Ravens have to adjust. Just like Monday we had to adjust, Lamar Jackson had to adjust, that Mark Andrews wasn't going to be there. But what happened is that he completed passes to multiple receivers who all shared the goal of making sure that Baltimore was victorious on Monday night. And this is exactly what we're going to do here, henceforth, with this collaborative in this work. And with that, we will take questions. Hold on, give it 1 second, Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. I brought a page full of questions, but I'm going to limit it, promise. What is the cost of the initiatives? Where will the funding come from? Will the plan be phased in or all in, and how soon? I know you mentioned January 10. And as a follow-up, and I'll spare asking this again, what is the amount of the guaranteed income? And thank you.
Well, a couple things. We'll get the deputy mayor, the solicitor, to come up and take some more depth. But let me be very clear, Dave, that this is not guaranteed income. I know that there have been some folks that are trying to say that. I don't think those folks understand what guaranteed income is. Guaranteed income is you get it regardless. In order to do this pilot that we're talking about is more like an apprenticeship. In order to get the money, you have to be participating in other things and moving in other ways. You just don't get it regardless. So anyone who thinks this is guaranteed income, you can Google guaranteed income and find out what it is and understand that this is not that. When you are talking about apprenticeships, I don't care if you're working for the electricians or you're working for HVAC or the steaming and pipe fitters, you're going to get paid while you're learning how to do the work, while you're learning to turn your life from something else. We can talk about how many individuals in our city have started off on the wrong foot, went through an apprenticeship program, and are now successful in providing for their families. And then I'll turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor. But I will say, just to start, Dave, that I have already committed another $1 million to the support of the work for the boys and young men of color, and we're going to grow that work out from there. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, sir. All right, so I've gotten this question a lot. How much is this plan going to cost? It's going to be expensive, y'all. I'm just kidding. So, so we believe that this plan will potentially cost us upwards of $5 million, and that is a very, very rough estimate. But the good thing about bringing together the greatest minds in Baltimore around this issue is that we've already started looking internally to determine how we can absorb the costs. So, for example, we're working with the private sector, as John talked about, through Civic Innovators, to do an assessment of the organizational structure of the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement. They will make recommendations about how we can absorb the service navigators into the current MOAM infrastructure, right? So we currently have staff there. It's about reimagining their roles. It's not necessarily about bringing on additional staff. Additionally, I mentioned in my remarks that we're pursuing a grant opportunity for this Earn and Learn pilot that we've talked about. And so we're working with our partners and researchers on filling out that LOI and pursuing that grant opportunity. And philanthropy has already stepped up, right? The T. Rowe Price Foundation and Baltimore Core has already developed the Shine platform, that crowdfunding platform that was mentioned earlier. Also, we're leveraging our $30 million ARPA commitment that the mayor made around employment services. So we're going to be leveraging an existing program called Hire Up, and that's how we're going to hire young people and place them into paid training opportunities. So again, you know, when I talk about that $5 million number as kind of a rough estimate, it is just that, right? It is a rough estimate, but a lot of that is already absorbed in the work that is already being done. It is about us being efficient and reimagining how we deliver our services to young people.
Hi, Mayor. I see the map up there. What would you like drivers to know if they, come to one of those intersections? Are they, would you advise them not to give out any money, and what will there be special signage there? What can we expect there?
Yeah, again, what we're saying is that we're talking about January 10th. So just like we did with I-83, we're going to be putting things up to telling folks so that everyone knows, starting on these days, this is what's going to be happening, and that everybody, drivers, folks who squeegee, all will be held accountable. So they should not, noting that we're going to be doing enforcement in any measure, in different measures, starting that day. But if some folks may choose to continue to do so, they do so at their own risk.
And are there concerns that the squeegee activity could go to other areas where, not on that map, that it would push it to other areas in the city?
Well, listen, just like anything else, you're always talking about displacement and movement. That's why you heard us all talking about a working, movable plan. That's something we know, that things just don't exist in one place. But we use the data, as you heard from everyone today, to determine these particular locations that are throughout the city where a lot of the activity has happened.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mackenzie?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A couple of things. Maybe can the deputy solicitor come back and just explain how we heard for months and months that the enforcement of the laws were unconstitutional and you were concerned, and now we're seeing it being enforced?
Before you come, Deputy, I just want to state for the record that we always enforce the law. We made arrests in the last couple of weeks, but what we're talking about is, the deputy is going to talk about, is equitable constitutional enforcement, not going back to what we did before, which you heard about from Vicky today, about being seen as human, not human as an animal just because you're black. We're not going back to that ever again in Baltimore. Deputy?
Thank you for that question, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. The question in terms of enforceability, we believe, has two different sections. The question that has been raised usually in the media, which we've heard over and over again, is the enforceability of the laws as written. And we acknowledge that that is a vital first step. However, how you enforce is really, if not as important, more important, because there can be laws that are constitutional as written, but then in practice unenforceable. And I'll give you an example. If you have certain panhandlers that are going through with signs or charitable organizations stating that they want money, and they're going car to car outside of the median strip, but then you say, if you have a squeegee worker, because they have a squeegee stick, that now that person is a disfavored speaker. So you're labeling, you're basing your reaction on the content of that speech. And when you do that, that's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, and that will be struck down. So we will not engage in those activities because a lot of the proposals initially were in the roundabout ways of clearing the corners or rounding people up or pretty much just removing them from visibility. And we believe that the Constitution requires us to create a narrowly tailored approach, meaning not sweeping where it's overbroad, but by using a comprehensive plan where we can actually figure out and use the data to target where those hot spots are, where we're getting the 311 calls, where we're getting the assaults, where we're getting actual squeegee workers that are hit in accidents, they're being hit by cars. We can let that data drive our enforcement strategy. And we have never maintained that the laws were not enforceable. Every single time you've asked that question, the law department has said, either written or verbal, we've always said, any enforcement strategy that we implement must strike a balance between the legitimate public safety interests of the city and then the workers. So, did you have another?
I just, in terms of the training programs that we're seeing for the squeegee kids, how do you guarantee or how will you ensure that the people who are involved in these training programs don't go back out and squeegee? And then what happens if they do?
Okay, I'll let Deputy Mayor Leach take that one, Mackenzie.
Thanks.
Sure. So I do want to add on to one thing that the solicitor said about the first question, and then I'll move to the second question. And so this question has come out a lot, like about enforcing the laws that are on the books and why don't we just do it? And the specific law in question was around solicitation that calls out window washing specifically, which isn't a new law. That law has been on the books for decades and has never been fully enforced. In fact, it's actually had multiple legal challenges dating back to 1993, and then back in 2013, I think the council tried to make some amendments, and it again received opposition from the ACLU. So that goes back to this larger point. It's been on the books, right? And then we should paint an even bigger picture here about laws on the books, right? Just 2 days ago, we had an election. There were 4 states that approved ballot measures that would change their constitutions to prohibit slavery or indentured servitude. Those were laws on the books. In Baltimore, we have a law that has a restrictive covenant that would not allow a black person to buy a home in Edmondson Village. That exists right now on the books. Obviously, we wouldn't enforce those things, and we wouldn't expect those 4 states that struck down slavery and indentured servitude when it was on the books to enforce that. So just want to paint the broader picture here of why we have done the approach in the way that we've done it. The question about the programs that we are going to be working with our young people on and how do we ensure their success? We ensure their success by not giving up on them, right? And I'm going to be honest with you. There are going to be some failures. We're not always going to get it right, but we're also not going to give up. That is what this work requires. It is the work that Dr. Santelises does every single day as the CEO of City Schools. And it's the work that we need to do as a city, and that is stay committed and stay the course for our young people. And so that's why they will be connected with a credible mentor or a navigator who will be there through the hard times. The things that these young people are navigating, like I can't even begin to tell you how they are able to make it, right? I can't, as an adult, understand how I would navigate being housing insecure or food insecure or dealing with the loss of loved ones and constant death and destruction in my community. I can't imagine how I would do that. So imagine having to wake up every day and figure out how you're gonna make it happen. But that's what they do. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wake up every day and we're gonna figure out how to help them make it happen. And we're not gonna give up on them.
So just to be clear,
Yes.
just to be clear, are there any mechanisms in place in this plan right now that would
Oh, yes.
require them to go through another round of training? Or is there anything in place that would say you can't be a part of this program because you said you were going to, we're giving you this training and we're giving you this assistance, but you're still going out on the corners.
Yes, so yes, that actually is explicitly called out in the plan.
Okay.
Where you have to commit to not squeegeeing or participating in squeegee activity. And so when we see you, that's when I'm gonna send Mr. Rick out or Mr. Vernon to have a conversation with that young person that signed this commitment that said that they were gonna do this thing, right? And so Dr. Bunny will talk to you about how we gotta hold our young people accountable. This is progressive discipline, right? And so when they do wrong, that's when we check them, and that's when we pull them back in. And so yes, you might lose your incentive, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna lose an opportunity. We're gonna give you another one. You just might lose a portion of the opportunity that we've provided for you.
And just what's the citation that they would get if they go out in other areas after they receive the warnings from police?
Yes, I'm gonna bring up the police commissioner for that
Thanks,
one.
and then I'm done.
Good, thank you.
I was getting ready to say that, Mackenzie, because you have your colleagues waiting behind you.
I know.
Thank you. That's a great question. So we're now developing protocols, policy, training, so that if and when we have to issue a citation, it would be for the law that's actually on the books about the squeegeeing. That's going to be disallowed. And, then it becomes a matter of what happens if they do it again? What's the time frame for the second warning or the second citation? But it will be a sequence of warning, warning, then citation.
Emily, you're solo today, so you're not squared.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm wondering what the reaction was when the collaborative told other members of Squeegee Youth that the plan was to ban squeegeeing on these 6 areas. Vicki's shaking her head.
All right, Vicki, I'm gonna call you out. So we pulled the group in. So we had a smaller working group. So we've been meeting since July. And then the last 4 weeks, we pulled together a much more intimate group because our group had grown to 150 people. And so we had about 25 or so folks. And so when we were ready with our recommendations, we knew we needed to bring the young people in. And so we worked with Dr. K, and the young people came in. And when we went through the disallowed zones, there was an audible gasp and some sitting back in the chair like, oh man, right? But we worked through it, right? We worked through it because these young people want more. And that's what we talk to them about, right? You can stay hustling on the corner, making a couple dollars here and there, squeegeeing for hours, or you can be on a more productive career pathway, which is gonna earn you much more money in the long term, right? And so when we talk to young people about the value proposition, they got it. And they're open to it, and they're actually gonna be out there helping us with the outreach, so they're gonna be peer ambassadors that are gonna be sharing this message.
I believe you said you're hoping that the income program will be able to help about 100 people. I believe past squeegee counts of youth who squeegee are somewhere near 200. Do you have any concerns that the need is greater than the resources that will be available there?
Yeah, and so we also know that young people are in and out off the corners, right? So sometimes they're there, they may find a new opportunity, they shift off, right? And so the idea, we've looked at least 100 young people, but as I mentioned earlier, we're working with researchers and applying for this grant opportunity. And so the number of young people that will receive this Earn and Learn, let's call it Earn and Learn, incentive will be determined by the resources that we are able to identify. If we get a large enough grant, then we might, ramp that up to 200 and maybe, not just work with squeegee workers, but other folks, right? So it is all determined by the resources that we are able to pursue through this grant opportunity.
Thank you.
I'll make mine quick here. You're talking before about, the root causes, the whole objective. The mayor can answer this, anybody can answer it. What about the root causes of those who are against it? This is really steeped in racism going back to the 80s. The economics of it as well. Vicki told the story about what it's like to grow up in the inner city. A lot of people don't know what it's like to really go without. So what do you say to those people right now who are listening saying, I just want people off the street and I don't want to deal with anything else but that? And how difficult is it to get across to those people that it takes a lot to get to that point where you're trying to get at?
Yeah, I think we talked about this. I know John and I talked about this last week, right? when we're talking about this issue, right, and when you talk about this issue in the greater context of what's happening, not just here, but across this country over the last few years, what folks have to do is something that they don't want to do, that I said to everybody involved in this collaborative at the beginning. They have to be willing to look in the mirror and be uncomfortable, understanding how we got here, right, and that you can sit at home and look at some young person or look at me or look at John and Joe, whoever's talking about squeegee issues at the time, and say that it's their fault when the issue has existed longer than them or longer than John has been in Baltimore, right? Or we could do what we should be doing. It's saying, how did we get here, right? And we know how we got here. We got here because this city weaponized something that would go across the country to determine where people could live based on their color, based on how much money they make. And then this city disinvested in those very neighborhoods and those people. We destroyed a whole middle-class black neighborhood in Baltimore to create a highway that doesn't exist today. That's how we got here. Folks started to leave the city and not be here, not invest in that city. And we cannot talk about anything when you're talking about poverty in this country and not have an open and honest conversation about race. Because that's the reality. What folks are doing is looking at these young people, looking at me when I was a young man, when they said that we shouldn't be able to come outside, which caused me to be sat down in handcuffs in the pouring rain just because of how I looked and what I had on that day. That's what we're talking about here. And until folks want to have a real and open, honest conversation about that, they should shut up and get involved with this group of people who really want to help the issue. Because we will not continue to have this conversation of basically that poverty is fine as long as I don't have to see it, right? We're not going to have that conversation. You'll never hear me say, never have, never I will say, that we're going to accept that anybody can be assaulted or robbed. I don't care what you look like, what color you are. The commissioner and I told some folks at Guilford this last night. I had to stand up with the police commissioner last summer to talk about a gun trafficking arrest of someone that I grew up with, that I ran track with, and it did not matter to me because he did it. And that means no matter who you are, we're going to hold you accountable. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about the entirety of the situation. And the entirety of the situation in Baltimore is tied to race and economics and the entire history of this country. The fact that the deputy mayor just said that in 2022 we had states voting on slavery should let everyone know racism is alive and well in this country. You can be uncomfortable about it. You should understand it. You should know that people are treated differently by the way they look, what color they are, what sexual orientation they are. These elections that you're seeing and everywhere else but Maryland, thank God we're a little wiser here, right, should show you that. This is what we're talking about, and this is why folks that are committed here, the business community, philanthropic community, people who squeegee, government, law enforcement, everybody together is saying that we can be better than that. As the great Congressman Cummings said, if we come together. But coming together means that we have to be uncomfortable and talk about the entirety of the issue. This is not a 5-second clip on the news at night. These young people are not pawns in some media scheme to make Baltimore and young black people look out to be the boogeyman. This is about the history of our city and our state and our country and trying to undo these things that caused it in the first place.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed that the city's next top prosecutor isn't here. Is there a reason for that, and how do you plan?
I was waiting on that, so I'll just say before you say it, ask the question. We have briefed State's Attorney Bates. He is in agreement. He and I, we talked specifically about, he asked some questions around what you guys call guaranteed income that we're talking about, earn and learn. Again, I'll say it 3 times so y'all remember, earn and learn, earn and learn, earn and learn. That it's about the way that we present it. There is no issue, there's no space between our new State's Attorney and me on this issue. Don't try to create it. Don't try to spread this kind of hate and divisiveness between 2 black men. Baltimore is not going to stand for it.
He's been very clear, though, that he believes these young men should not be on the quarter. So how do you plan to work with him when it comes to the accountability part of this new plan?
Again, I'll say it again, maybe I wasn't very clear. He's in full agreement with the plan. That includes how it's being enforced. Therefore and thus, there is no issue about how the plan is being enforced according to the state's attorney. And I will remind you all again that the state's attorney had a representative on this collaborative. None of this is a surprise to him at all. Anybody else? Thank you very much, everybody.